Welcome to ParaTruth.
How's it going, ParaTruthers? Welcome to a brand new episode of ParaTruth Reborn. My name is Justin. As you can see, I'm running solo today. So excited to be back with you all and to introduce our next guest for the show. Today, we are talking to Jason Offutt about his book, Chasing North American Monsters. Jason grew up on a farm near the little town of Orrick, Missouri. In his life, he's been a farmhand, journalist, photographer, bartender, and the mayor of that same small town. Jason now teaches journalism at Northwest Missouri State University in Maryville and keeps the world safe from the forces of evil. Jason, welcome to ParaTruth Reborn. How's it going, man?
Hey, it's going great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, I had your original book, Chasing American Monsters, and so now it was exciting to see that you have North American Monsters. So what inspired you to do this book, the Chasing North American Monsters?
Well, my publisher asked me to.
Okay,
there we go.
That was basically,
for any writer out there, when a publisher asks you to write a book, that is awesome.
Right. Yeah. Right. Mostly it's pitching the other way around.
Exactly.
Being a self-published author, I've been there. So that's why I went the self-published route, because I write fiction. So it's sometimes even harder to get published.
Oh, and I write fiction as well. And it is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
All right. So, going into this book, what kind of research did you have to do for this, or how did you gather the legends and the stories?
Well, I looked into some of my favorite things to do are look into to media stories, TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, things like that, and also to look into native legends, their stories. See, this is one of the things about Western science and Western, civilization is all the indigenous peoples. We tend to ignore their stories, their legends, their mythology, their religion as hokey. This. Oh yeah, that's really fun. That's really cute. But so many times we find that, hey, wait a second, they were right. Why didn't we listen to them?
Right.
And so I go to a lot of indigenous sources as well.
Okay. Now, which monster or cryptid story surprised you the most in this book?
Ooh, surprised? I don't know. I've been dealing with cryptids for a long time. I don't know if surprised is something that I can be anymore. One of the things that I found interesting is this had to do in a lot in the Caribbean and in Central America. A lot of monsters, be it Fae type creatures or Bigfoot type creatures, have their legs are backward, their feet are backward, their knees are backward. And the legend is that they can, whenever they're walking through the forest and leaving footprints, humans don't know whether they're coming or going because the footprints are backward from where they, where they normally should be. I find that absolutely bizarre and hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, that's a different one. I don't think I've ever heard that information.
Well, one is the Sismite, which is on a couple of Caribbean islands and is also in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's their Bigfoot, and it's from the knees. It's backward. So Yeah, their knees bend backward and their feet are on backward, which, yeah, I don't know where that came from. That's interesting to me.
Right. Now, I know you've probably had this question multiple times, but how much of this is just myth and legend, like compared to misidentification of a creature as well?
I'm not going to be able to give you a percentage of cases on this, or a third of the book or anything like that. It's there are quite a few that are simply legend. There are some creation legends. There are some a lot of monster legends that are obviously parents didn't want their kids to stray too far from the house or from the fire or from the village, because they might get lost in the woods, sort of thing. And these stories were to scare them enough to keep them home. There were quite a few of those, but there were also a lot of stories. Actually, most of the stories uh, are people believe them. People have either seen these creatures or know someone who has.
Right. Well, and so I mean that kind of leads me to my next question. Bigfoot is one of the cryptids that is probably one of the most popular throughout all cultures outside of the dragon as well. But there's so many different theories on what Bigfoot is, and what its capabilities are. What is your take on Bigfoot?
My take on Bigfoot is that I got a big take on Bigfoot. If there's any creature out there that is a cryptozoological creature that's going to be found, I think it's going to be Bigfoot. There's so much evidence, not just firsthand encounters. I mean, those fascinate me, but we all know what a witness is. A witness is somebody who tells you what they think they saw. Witness testimony is not, it's not that great. But footprints with dermal ridges, I mean, enormous footprints with dermal ridges, nobody's going to fake that. The Skookum cast, oh my gosh, it had the tendon in an ankle and the heel print and a butt print, and there's also DNA evidence. People have found scat and hair and all this other fun stuff. I am convinced that the amount of evidence, physical evidence, for Bigfoot, if this was a murder trial, somebody would go to jail. Okay, so I really think that Bigfoot could be real. However, there's a lot of issues with Bigfoot. Back in the day, it was a flesh and blood creature, absolutely, a North American ape, unidentified. That's what it is, 100%. Since one hasn't been captured, people have gone to other hypotheses, like it's interdimensional, or it's spiritual, or something along those lines, or it's a pet that got loose from a UFO, whatever. I'm of the belief that I want it proven to not be flesh and blood before I'll go to one of these other explanations, because flesh and blood is the easiest one. The Occam's razor sort of thing. And I don't want to use interdimensional or spiritual, because those things aren't proven either. I don't want to give unproven reasons to explain an unproven animal. And one of the reasons for the interdimensional or the spiritual is it vanishes in the forest. Okay, I don't know how many of these people have actually been in a forest. I've been in the woods a lot growing up. I grew up out in the boonies, and walking through the forest, nothing was around me, and all of a sudden, 10 feet away, a white-tailed deer would spring up and dash away. I mean, they're not as big as a Bigfoot, but still, they're a large animal. and they were 10 feet away from me, and I had no clue they were there. And if Bigfoot is as intelligent as people think it is, I mean, hiding's got to be pretty easy.
Yeah, well, and especially with the hair, and if they are in a forest, they can be blending in with trees, and you just can't tell.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, that is well, a lot of people want to say spiritual, or they can jump through portals. There are some people that believe that just normal animals that we know of can go through portals. And if there is a portal somewhere there, I mean, obviously humans could even walk through it if there's a portal there, but
Right, but and I'm not saying that is not what's happening. What I'm saying is I want the simple answer proven first before I'll take that step.
right. Gotcha. I gotcha. Now, something that I find fascinating about a lot of cryptids is there are quite a few that are specific to a place, like, for example, Mothman from Point Pleasant. Why do you think certain towns adopt these legends, or even states or regions?
Well, it's Mothman is an interesting one. It got its name in the late 1960s. It was witnessed a few times in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It was witnessed above the Silver Bridge before it collapsed. A newspaper man who liked the Adam West Batman show gave it the name Mothman because it sounded like a Batman villain. But John Keel, the great paranormal journalist from back in that day, who wrote the Mothman Prophecies book, felt that there were probably his explanation for a lot of these encounters was there are window areas, areas where a veil is thin between worlds, and sometimes it's thin enough that somebody can step through. And that was kind of the thing that he used to explain Mothman in Point Pleasant. However, Mothman's been seen other places other than Point Pleasant. There was a bridge collapse in Minneapolis, I don't know, 15 years ago maybe, and people had claimed to see a Mothman type creature there. People claimed to see a Mothman type creature around Chernobyl before the meltdown happened. And Lon Strickler from Phantoms and Monsters has done an absolutely wonderful job collecting all sorts of stories from the Chicago area uh, over the past 5, 6, 7, 8 years or more about 70, 80, 90 Mothman encounters in that area. So I don't think Mothman is one that's contained any one place, but there are plenty that are. There are several Goatmen stories. One also from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. One from Fort Worth, Texas, and they tend to those encounters tend to be in about the same place. Where do these things go during the day? I have no idea. But I mean, they're localized. There could be a reason for that. A lot of times, ghost stories are localized. It could be in any number of things.
Right. Now, what do these legends really reveal about us as humans? Not just about the creatures themselves. Is it something where we're kind of over exaggerating the truth a little bit?
Well, yeah, it very well could be. I mean, like I said, there are a lot of stories that are, little Jimmy, don't go out at night because the boogeyman's going to get you. Those sort of stories to keep kids safe. Those are all over the world, all over every culture's got stories like that to protect the kids. But when it comes to these stories, it's a lot like literature or films or whatever is in the zeitgeist. It's whenever the world is experiencing problems, we turn to ghosts. We turn to monsters.
Mm.
I mean, let's look at the great monster movies. When did they come out? You know, Frankenstein, Dracula, 1931, King Kong, 1933, Invisible Man, not that long after, the Wolf Man in 1940. It was all during the Great Depression and during when World War II was starting in Europe. We had lots of problems, in our country and on the planet, and we needed something to distract us, something to blame things on. So let's go watch a monster movie. During issues during the Civil War, the spiritualist movement was really big. Let's look at this instead of worrying about our problems. That has something to do with it. You mentioned, are we misidentifying things? I mean, absolutely we can. Humans misidentify. I mean, how many times have you stayed? Has your audience stayed at somebody else's house? Maybe you're sleeping on the couch, and you wake up in the middle of the night and you see a man, a dark shadow of a man standing in the corner, and you're terrified. And when you wake up, you fall back asleep. But when you wake up the next morning, there's a coat on a coat rack.
Right.
You're right. Yeah, that's misidentification is fairly easy. However, taking a step back to Bigfoot, one of the explanations a lot of skeptics have is, it's a bear. Bears walk on their hind legs.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who describes seeing a Bigfoot has actually seen a bear. They don't move the same at all.
Well, but I think something to take into effect for that particular instance as well is fear can play tricks on the mind. So what you're remembering is not exactly what happened to.
Right. Going back to witness testimony is not perfect in any stretch of the imagination.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But, if I'm talking to somebody, if I'm interviewing somebody about they were driving, through the country,
mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden, this huge, dark, hairy shape walks in front of their car. What else would that be?
Right.
I mean, some eyewitness testimony, I think, is probably true. There's a lot of it that's probably misidentification. I was just talking to some of my students today about pareidolia. The fact that, the human brain is designed to make patterns where there aren't any. And we see faces everywhere. Heck, in my great aunt's house when I was a kid, across from the toilet, if I can get there, across from the toilet, the wallpaper, there was Richard Nixon's face was in the wallpaper. And total pareidolia, but you know what? That looked like Richard Nixon to me.
Yeah, I mean, I've had it happen too, but I'm also a medium, so sometimes I see faces, and they are probably there, just nobody else can see them.
Right.
So, pretty valid question here for you. How has investigating monsters changed the way that you see the natural world?
Oh, it hasn't at all. I mean, I've been wrapped up in monsters ever since I was a very young child. We had we had an independent TV channel out of Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up just east of there, and on Saturdays, man, the entire day was monster movies. And I'd watch that the whole day until my mom kicked my butt outside to go play. But other than that, I was watching monster movies. I grew up on In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, talking about the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. And I've absolutely been fascinated. But I've also thought, if they're real, people see these. Why aren't they real? Why can't they be real? Why shouldn't they be real? And I just have always thought that they are part of the natural world that we haven't, science hasn't discovered yet.
Okay. Now, I asked you about Bigfoot. What are your take on the different lake or sea monsters that you hear about? Lake Champlain here in the U.S., Loch Ness, Ogopogo. What's your take on that?
It really depends on the lake. In researching my first book, Chasing American Monsters, I found a few lake monsters that were located in man-made lakes. I'm like, well, how the heck did that happen? It didn't. I mean, why? What are they trying to pull here? There's no way that there's a monster in that lake. It was dammed up and made in 1934. Okay, there's no way there's a plesiosaur there.
Right.
I really don't know. There have been so many sightings. Ogopogo, there have been a lot of sightings over the years. Of course, Loch Ness. Actually, I've proposed a class, travel writing class, at my university, to go next summer over to the UK to look for monsters, and we're going to spend our last day before we fly home on Loch Ness looking for the monster. But I think some of these lakes are big enough that they can hold a creature that's large enough to be called a monster. Because when you have sea life or anything in the water, whatever it is kept in, you can have goldfish in a bowl in your house, and they're going to remain 3 inches long.
Right, the size of the vessel, right?
You dump them in a lake, these things are going to grow to be like 20 pounds. Mm-hmm. Enormous. Loch Ness is huge. Lake Champlain is huge. Where Ogopogo is also big. There could be something large there. The only thing I have against any of these lake monsters is they've been seen for so long. Loch Ness especially, I think the first sighting was in like 700 B or AD. Mm. So it's there's got to be a breeding population. Right. If you're not going to have a 2,000-year-old monster or a 1,500-year-old monster, whatever, it's got to have a breeding population, and there haven't been enough sightings for a breeding population. Now, when it comes to the ocean, that's a completely different story.
Right.
Because we have, with satellites, mapped 95% of the ocean floor, but we have also 95% of our oceans are unexplored. Mm-hmm. We honestly have no clue what's down there. We know a lot of things, but science discovers about 18,000 new species a year. A lot of them are, insects, little lizards, but a whole bunch of them are sea life. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know what's down there, and we keep finding things. Could there be a plesiosaur in the Pacific Ocean somewhere? I think there probably could be. One that comes to mind is the Cadbrosaurus. It is along the northern Pacific coast, Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, British Columbia. These things, it's a like 30, 40, 50 foot long snake-like monster that or sea creature that has been seen for hundreds of years. There are Native American petroglyphs in Washington of this creature, along with creatures we actually know about. And we actually have a picture of it. There was one pulled from the belly of a sperm whale, like back in the 20s or 30s. And a photo was taken of it, although it has never been categorized as an actual living creature. That one very well could be discovered at some point.
Right.
I said Cadborosaurus, not Cadburysaurus. It's not chocolate.
They were not close to Easter yet. So
Yeah, right.
now, how do you separate genuine eyewitness accounts from just tall tales or even hoaxes?
Oh, hoaxes make me extremely angry. I mean, I remember, oh God, I don't know how many years ago this was, but Tom Biscardi said in Georgia, he found a man who killed a Bigfoot. And I saw this on the news and I got so excited. Yeah, I don't want a Bigfoot shot, but you know what? That's going to be the only way we're going to, determine that they exist. And when he finally released a photo of a Bigfoot in the freezer, it was like an orangutan costume filled with hog intestines. I mean, that completely ruined everything, for all the other Bigfooters out there.
I remember that one. Yeah, I remember watching it multiple times, and I mean, of course, I was super skeptical about it, but at the same time, I'm reaching out to my co-host who wasn't here today because he's a cinematographer, so he has a very analytical eye on how to pick up fake. So I asked him, and he didn't think it was real either. So
I know. I mean, it doesn't just ruin things for cryptozoology. I mean, everything in the paranormal, it cast a shadow on.
Right.
And that's so when it comes to hoax, I mean, it's hoaxes, it's extremely frustrating. Anything that I think might be a hoax, I have not covered in any of my books.
Okay.
Okay. I stay as far away from those as I possibly can. I stick with people who, claim to have really seen them and seem to have been vetted by at least the news media or academics in some cases. I'm just trying to stay as truthful as I possibly can. My background is in journalism, so truth, baby.
Yeah. Well, and that really any type of hoax, whether it's cryptid or even people hoaxing that their house is haunted, because I have heard of that happening before. We're us, meaning paranormal investigators or podcasters, are trying to reach the truth, and that puts so much obscurity and cynicism on the paranormal when we're trying to make this like a very science, a science, and that just pushes us back so much.
It really does. I mean, in the eye of the public, it discredits everyone. I just when it comes to hoaxes, I'm really big into UFOs. Man, when Balloon Boy came out, do you remember Balloon Boy?
Balloon Boy. I remember the Bat Boy. I don't remember Balloon.
No, but Balloon. Well, Bat Boy is from the Weekly World News. I mean, it was obviously, and they're still telling Bat Boy stories, which are hilarious. But no, Balloon Boy. It was, I believe, in Colorado. A dad claimed that his young son had been kidnapped by a UFO.
Okay.
And he had a picture of the UFO. And when it came down to it and the investigation, to find this boy happened, what they discovered was a UFO balloon was flying, flying over Colorado. And the young boy was found hiding in a closet upstairs. It was a complete hoax, but it grabbed media attention for a couple of days.
Right.
It's just it's embarrassing when people do that.
Yeah, 100%. What obscure cryptid do you think deserves more attention?
Ooh, more attention. I'll tell you one that deserves less attention, which is Chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
I've come to the conclusion that that's absolutely bunk. But which one? Man, that's a great question. Well, one, I don't know if I'm going to call this. I guess I'll have to call it a cryptid. Is giant catfish.
Hmm.
There are catfish in Italy, or is it Spain? I think it might be. No, it's Spain. And in Southeast Asia, they grow up to 600-700 pounds. They're huge.
Hmm.
But people for years have claimed that in the United States, that in some big lakes, there are catfish that big at the bottom of the lakes. And Mark Twain in his autobiography, it was a memoir. I don't know if it was if he wrote any more memoirs. It might be his complete autobiography, but Life on the Mississippi is what it was called. He wrote of a river devil that the local Native Americans would talk about, and it was a giant catfish that would come up out of the river and turn boats over and do all sorts of havoc. I interviewed a conservation agent in southern Missouri. There's a lake, one of the lakes in the Lake of the Ozarks down there, has they caught 180-pound catfish that is on display, and that catfish has a bite mark on its back that dwarfs any mouth from any fish that we know of. So it kind of looks like there are giant catfish in our lakes, which makes me kind of skittish to go water skiing.
Well, I mean, I think the same thing has happened to at least one whale that I know of in the ocean, where they found a huge bite taken out of a whale that could have only been done by the shark the size of a megalodon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there was a 12-foot great white a number of years ago that was like bitten in half.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not entirely, but close to being bitten in half. And that was the bite size was of a megalodon. And talking about megalodons, are they there? Again, our oceans are enormous and we don't know what's down there. There is a shark that was seen in the Gulf of Cortez. It's been seen a number of times over the decades upon decades. That sounds like a megalodon. And the Gulf of Cortez is between Baja California and Mexico.
Okay. Would the depth be that or deep enough for something like that to live there?
I don't know. The ocean's pretty darn big. It doesn't have to stay there.
That's true too. Yeah.
It's like my wife and I took our kids to the Gulf Coast down in Mississippi to go to the beach and hang out. None of the kids had ever been before, and my wife and the older two were out in swimming, and they were out there a little bit too far, and I yelled. I'm like, "Come back! There might be sharks." My wife said, "There's no sharks here." And about 20 minutes later, a guy surf fishing down, just down the beach, reels in a shark.
Oh,
I'm like, yeah, of course. It's connected to the ocean, honey. There's sharks out here. So, yeah. The ocean, anything can be out there. One of the stories that absolutely fascinates me has to do with the late Norwegian anthropologist Thor Heyerdahl, who in the early 50s, I think it might have been the late 40s or early 50s.
okay.
He had a hypothesis that islands in the South Pacific were populated by people from Peru, because there were some words that were the same in their language. There were some architecture was similar. They had some plants that were native to South America, to Peru, that were out in the islands. And people, his colleagues said, no, that can't be, because they only had these balsa wood rafts. They didn't have the technology to sail 4,000 or 5,000 miles. So to prove his hypothesis, he and a few other Norwegian scientists built a big balsa wood raft, just like the ancient Peruvians did, and they set sail. And they made it all the way out there, a few thousand miles. But on the way, it wasn't in any shipping lanes. They were in the middle of nowhere. And Heyerdahl wrote in his book Kon-Tiki that there were lights under the water that followed the boat. And there were also at night, lights would come. And also at nights, there would be like volleyball sized or soccer ball sized lumps that would appear beside the boat. And they were eyes that were staring at the boat. And he had no idea what those are. Honestly, I don't know what they are. I interviewed a marine biologist about this thing, and he didn't know what they were either. So again, ocean, big stuff, we don't know.
Right. Now, have you found any new monsters that most people haven't heard about yet?
Well, I found old monsters that people haven't heard about. I don't know so much about new ones, but most monsters are pretty old.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I did find, and I wrote about in this book, if we can go back to Bigfoot for a second, would you mind? Okay. With my first book, Chasing American Monsters, and with this, Chasing North American Monsters, and I will add on to this, my book coming out next September, Chasing the World's Monsters, fingers crossed, Volume 1. There are cases of three-toed Bigfoot. Okay, I can understand a five-toed Bigfoot. Mammal, 5 toes, ape-like 5 toes. Sure, I get that.
Right.
But let's start in Louisiana. The Honey Island Swamp Monster was a Bigfoot that was seen a number of times back in the 60s and 70s. It left three-toed footprints. Let's go just north to Arkansas to the Folk Monster, which the movie the Legend of Boggy Creek was made after. It left three-toed footprints. Let's go upward to Missouri, the next state up. Momo, the monster from the Bigfoot from Louisiana, Missouri, which is also on the Mississippi River. All of these follow the Mississippi River. Momo left three-toed footprints. There were three-toed footprints left in Iowa. There were three-toed footprints left in Minnesota. So all down the Mississippi corridor were three-toed footprints of a Bigfoot. Which, I mean, animals migrate. They tend to follow waterways, so I kind of get that. But what animals have three-toed footprints? And they're not just toes. They weren't toes. They were claws. Up in Canada, and let's go down to the Yucatan, and then down farther in South America and into the Amazon, there are stories of giant, hairy, bipedal sometimes, other times they're on all fours, creatures that have 3 toes, 3 claws. And when some natives in Canada who reported seeing this thing in 1985, more recently in the Amazon, some natives reported seeing one of these. They look like the giant ground sloth, which inhabited North and South America during the Pleistocene. Could they still be around? I'm a proponent of there's a possibility that there are some animals from the Pleistocene era, from back in the uh back in the Ice Age, that might still be living, because there are so many places in the world. But let's look at North America that are uninhabited. Like 42% of the United States is uninhabited. Sure, a lot of those places people will go into to go to parks, drive through a desert to go, to go from, Vegas to LA or whatever. But there are so many places with forests and mountains, deserts, whatnot, that are uninhabited.
Mm, yeah.
Let's look at Canada. Let's look at Mexico. Look at the Amazon, for gosh sakes. There are places to where these creatures could actually still be alive. So are they cryptids, or are they, extant creatures? I don't know. I'd like to find out.
Right. Like the thylacine, or yeah, exactly.
Right. The Thunderbird very well could be an extant pterosaur.
Right. Right. Now, how do American cryptid stories compared to those of the rest of the world?
It's really, really funny. Going through the entire world, they're so similar.
Yeah.
They're so similar. Bigfoot, there are Bigfoot stories from every continent, not counting Antarctica, but there are Bigfoot stories, and not just from the continents. There are Bigfoot stories from Sri Lanka. There are Bigfoot stories from New Zealand. All right, these are islands, this is out in, on the ocean, and there are Bigfoot stories.
Right.
There are also little people stories from all over the planet. And then the fun thing about those is they all act the same. If we're talking about puckwudgies, if we're talking about elves, gnomes, tomties, kobolds, hobgoblins, trolls, whatever we're talking about, from North or South America, Central America, Africa, Australia, every continent has these stories of diminutive people between 2 and 3 feet tall. Sometimes they steal babies. Sometimes they leave sickly babies, after they stole the healthy one. They generally have big noses and big ears. They dress like the natives. They have bows and arrows. They're either magical or poisonous. They can turn invisible. They can start fires. They will help people if people are treating nature right. They will, if people are treating nature poorly, they tend to lure them out in the middle of nowhere and drop them off a cliff. And these stories are worldwide. One of the things that is absolutely fascinating was in the early 2000s on the Indonesian island of Flores. There was a story about the Ibu Gogo, and that is translated to mean grandmother who eats everything. The story from the locals was these 2 to 3 foot tall humans with big ears and big noses would come into the camps, steal babies, and run away. And they figured they ate them. And, Western science was like, oh, yeah, this is a cute story. Until in the early 2000s, they discovered a cave with fully grown humans that were 2 to 3 feet tall.
Wow.
They were even called Homo florensis. They have their own category of humanity, where they're a branch of humanity. They nicknamed them the Hobbits because the Lord of the Rings had just come out.
Okay.
But it's proof that the local stories were right about these little people.
Do you think modern technology like trail cams, drones, DNA analysis will eventually prove or disprove these creatures?
I mean, I hope so. I hope so. I would prefer it to be something like that, other than somebody shooting one of these animals. I don't want, I mean, I understand that probably if we're going to prove one of these animals exists, somebody's going to have to shoot and kill one or run one down with a truck. But I would hope that through a trail cam, although it seems like Bigfoot's too smart for trail cams, or a drone, or DNA, that one is going to be found. The thing about DNA, though, when it comes to Bigfoot, man, we've been talking about that hairy guy for a long time.
Yeah.
When it comes to the DNA, there was DNA found and analyzed in the United States, and it was determined to be human, but with some anomalies. There was some supposed Bigfoot DNA found in Alberta, Canada. And when it was analyzed, it was found to be human with some anomalies. There was, I don't know if you're familiar with the case of the Alma named Zana in Russia. It was a female Bigfoot that was captured in this village, and she was kept for slave labor. And for some reason, the guys in the village must have been really lonely because a lot of them had sex with her. And she produced a few children. And one of her children, a British scientist, had his bones exhumed and DNA analysis done on him. And he was found to be human with some anomalies. Well, I'm going to run this, by you. That a lot of native populations around the world consider these large, hairy people to be large, hairy people and not animals. They view them as people. So maybe the DNA analysis isn't showing that the DNA is wrong. Maybe they are actually people, and it's the little bit of DNA anomalies that make them what they are. They might be us that we don't invite over for a family dinner.
Yeah, our friend Kat Ward, her show's Paranormal Heart, and she had a guest on. He was a Native American. I think he was originally from Canada, but came to the U.S. and is working here. But mentioned that cryptids are not these creatures that can just like disappear, reappear, whatever. That there was a tribe that didn't want anything to do with technology at all, and went back to the woods and ended up becoming essentially wild men. Yeah. So I've heard that theory, and it's fascinating enough. And I don't know if you ever saw this History Channel special of, it was a what if mermaids were real, but it basically said, there were these hominids that didn't want to live on land. They wanted to live in the water, and eventually their legs became tails, and hair was gone to be replaced by scaly skin. Who's to say that evolution didn't eventually work like that?
I mean, we came from the ocean anyway, according to science. There was something, and I don't know enough about this to talk about it intelligently, but I do remember reading something about the wet ape hypothesis, which is that humans lived in the water for a while. And who knows what would happen to us then? Right. Evolution's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing and scary all at the same time. How has the internet changed being a cryptid hunter? Has it kind of made things easier or worse?
Both. I mean, it's made things easier because instead of physically going to every newspaper or magazine and looking through their microfiche and going to libraries and looking through microfilm. It's all online.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go to look for newspaper or magazine reports, I can find it in my pajamas, which is awesome. But it's also I think it keeps a lot of people out of the woods. Honestly, I don't really feel like going out in the woods a lot. I spent a lot of time there as a kid, and it's cold and lonely. So I don't actually really want to encounter a Bigfoot. I just want to write about him. So something that I've said a lot about all sorts of paranormal entities is they're fun as long as somebody else encounters them.
Right. So you've never had an encounter yourself, or have you?
Not with a cryptid. I've had a few ghost encounters, but cryptids, no.
Okay.
And again, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And let's talk about cryptid encounters just for a second, because this really gets on my nerves when people are like, why everybody's got a phone in their pocket? All these phones have cameras. Why aren't there any good pictures of Bigfoot, good videos of Bigfoot? Well, here's my explanation. If I'm out in the woods and an 8-foot tall, 700-pound, bipedal, skunk smelling creature starts approaching me, the last thing I'm going to do is pull out my phone and ask him to wait, for me to put my code in and punch the camera app. No, I'm going to run away. So I don't buy the fact that since we all have cameras, we should have good pictures of Bigfoot. Matter of fact, I don't believe any good pictures of Bigfoot. There's so much. I mean, this was even before AI was so common. I mean, I can make something look fairly decent in Photoshop, and I'm terrible at Photoshop. Somebody who's really good at it, can make a Bigfoot look like it's, drinking a Budweiser on my back deck. Oh, so yeah, I don't trust good pictures, and the bad ones, I put a little bit more faith in those.
Well, I mean, just look at one of the most well-known pieces of evidence for Bigfoot is the Patterson film.
Right.
And there have been people that have torn that apart saying, yeah, this is a very old film, so it's very grainy. You can't see things very well. It definitely looks like a person in a costume. And I believe there was somebody that even came out and said that, oh yeah, that was me, which I believe was disproven at this point. And then there are people now saying that, if you look at this film on a big screen in great detail, you can see musculature moving. That's not something you can do in a suit.
The best ape makeup at that time was a year later in 1968's The Planet of the Apes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not that good.
Right.
As the Patterson Gimlin film. Yes, you can see musculature. One of my one of the things that I will say about the film is, about it being real, is the fact that in 1967, if you are going to be a hoaxer, are you going to give it boobs?
Right.
You are not going to do that. You're not going to make it a female. It's going to be a male Sasquatch. That's going to be easier to do.
Right.
So to me, that's more telling than anything else.
Well, and so before we wrap up, I wanted to get your take on Dogman, because I've heard a theory recently that I've kind of, before I even heard it, was kind of thinking myself, is that Dogman is on the same genetic line as Bigfoot. They've just gone feral. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I don't agree with that because dogmen descriptions are different. I mean, they're big, they're hairy, they're scary. They got teeth. But they're not physically structured like a Bigfoot. They don't have, I mean, some Bigfoots have an ape-like muzzle, not like dogmen are described. Dogmen have a wolf-like muzzle. So I don't think if dogmen exist, and in fact, okay, let me go with this. I'm not saying any of these creatures exist. I'm not saying I know exactly what anything is. Anybody who says I know exactly what Bigfoot is doesn't have a clue.
Mhm.
All right. But dogmen fascinate me only for the reason that a friend of mine who I trust encountered one. He saw a dog man. He was in his truck when he saw it, and the thing stood up in the middle of the road when he honked at it, turned around and looked him right in the eyes, and walked off of the road into the forest. And if it wasn't for that, I would discount a lot of dogmen encounters because to me it just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
A big ape makes sense for some reason to me, but a bipedal dog, I mean, that's a little bit too strange. But like I said, I mean, there's got to be something to it. Linda Godfrey, who is sadly passed.
We love Linda.
Yeah, Linda was terrific. She, when she first talked with the somebody from the sheriff's office, it might have even been the sheriff about this dog, this werewolf encounter. He was like, "We got a whole file on it. Do you want it?" There aren't that people are not going to report seeing something like that unless they saw it.
Right.
Which a lot of these things, like the lizard man of South Carolina, that one, nobody's going to report that unless it actually happened.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are getting close to the end, so I want to give the mic to you to tell everybody where they can find you, find your work. The mic's all yours.
All right. Yeah. My website is jasonoffutt.com. My books are there. My books are also all at Barnes and Noble, Amazon.com, Books a Million, any place that sells books. I also write novels, which are fun to me. And if anybody has any questions or comments, I'm on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky.
You're on all of them too. Mastodon is apparently a new one I've never heard of.
I've not been on Mastodon. I have opened a TikTok account, although I haven't done anything on it except for sample strange ice cream.
Yeah, I mean, TikTok is basically a death scrolling for me, but we do have a TikTok as well.
I didn't want to do it, but my publisher's like, you really should. Okay, maybe I will.
Well, but yeah, then the next step is actually making content to get out on there to, get the word out and stuff. And that, I mean, that's as difficult as doing Facebook and Instagram. So,
right.
But
anyway, that's where you can get a hold of me. So yeah, again, if anybody wants to ask a question, make a comment, or tell me a cryptid that I might be interested in, please do.
Absolutely. Jason, thank you so much for being on ParaTruth Reborn, and we will definitely have to get you on again when Orrick can be on, so that he can talk cryptids with you as well. I'm sure you're not done writing books yet, so
I am definitely not. And Justin, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And I love your ghost shirt.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed the interview with Jason Offutt. His book is Chasing North American Monsters. Make sure you check that out. we did have a poll for this episode, and it was a very interesting spread as to the answers that we got. So we had the question of, do you believe in cryptids like Bigfoot, Mothman, or lake monsters? And the answers were absolutely, some yes, just miss, not sure. We had one absolutely. We had 2 yeses, or some yes, I should say. That was me and Eric. None that said just miss. One person that said not sure. And then our friend Steven Spears in our Facebook group put misinterpreted experiences, which we talked about here. So get on the conversation. We do, like I said, we do have our official Facebook page now. It'll be in the show notes for you guys. And yeah, check us out on YouTube, Spotify. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. So until next week, folks, where you'll find us same time, same channel. My name is Justin. Talk to you guys later.